Hey guys, welcome into the Alabama Postgame Show brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. I'm your host, Simone Eli, alongside Mark Heim. Things just, hit triple zeros there in Fayetteville as Alabama gets it done. 49-26, the final over Arkansas. The Tide improve to 2-0 in the conference after the win over Vanderbilt, and then the win over Arkansas today. Mark, obviously all of the concerns and all of the thoughts right now are with quarterback Bryce Young and what his status is. But Nick Saban just spoke to CBS in the post game, and what exactly did he say?
He used the words sprained shoulder, and if that is indeed the case, then Crimson Tide Nation, a sigh of relief, because there's so much speculation going on between the time that injury took place and the minute that game ended. A lot of people were talking about, well, what's the rest of the schedule look like? How are they going to adapt? What are they going to do with the shoulder? And as of right now, according to Nick Saban, just a sprained shoulder. So you were thinking worst case scenario, hoping for the best. This is probably closer to the hoping for the best.
Yes, no doubt about that. When this all went down, Mark, first of all, there was confusion as to what happened because on that specific play that Bryce exited the game, it didn't look like much. Then CBS's replay and what we just showed here on the show clearly showed that he extended his arm, went down hard after a tackle. And in that moment, Mark, it certainly looked very, very concerning. Bryce throwing his helmet out of frustration, not something that we typically see from Bryce, kind of emotional like that, understandably so.
Sure.
I think that just added to what we thought the severity of it could have been at that moment.
Yeah, so obviously, Gary Danielson was talking about a similar situation he had and the injury. I think AJ McCarron, who's been in the news a little bit this week, went to Twitter, talked about how he had a very similar situation where he had that whole thing extended. It was like an AC joint and a labrum, and he injured his twice. Once against Arkansas, ironically enough, he said he played through it. In fact, they kind of shoot the guys up a little bit and get them to play through it. Yeah. And so I thought he was going to be a little bit of a prophet there because in the second half starts, Bryce comes out, he hands it off one time, and then you don't see him the rest of the game. Yeah. So, it was there was a lot of information going on out there in worst case scenario, but Alabama gets it done. They had to go about it a little different way, but third quarter was looking brutal. I'm not telling you don't know, Simone. It was looking pretty rough. Yep. But at the end of the day, Alabama gets the win.
Yep, Arkansas scored 23 unanswered points to really make this a ball game going into the fourth quarter. We didn't really know what to expect, but kudos to Jalen Milroe to come in and manage the game that he did. Obviously, Bryce Young is the reigning Heisman winner. He's one of the best in the entire country, but to his credit, Jalen Milroe came in and ran the ball when necessary, delivered passes. I felt like he managed the game in a necessary way. Obviously, Alabama gets the win there in Fayetteville.
Yeah, so obviously there's tons for Nick Saban to be concerned about, especially in the first half. He had the passing game, the receivers dropped a bunch of balls. I think Ja'Cory Brooks dropped one. Trayshawn Holden dropped one. Latu dropped one. I think in the second half, he had a bunch of dumb penalties. He had some special teams breakdowns. So there's going to be plenty for Nick Saban to harp on and complain about. Toa had the penalty. Kool-Aid wasn't set on defense. He got burned for PI. Turner had the face mask. Moody with the personal foul and the punt coverage. So there's a lot to unpack there. But to your point, they got the ball rolling. I think they only had 1 yard of offense or negative yard in the third quarter alone. They had 11 plays and negative 1 yard. In the fourth quarter, they got the big run by Milroe that really changed the dynamic of the game. And then Jahmyr Gibbs just went nuts. He had 2 70-plus yard runs. They had 221 yards in the second half alone running the ball. So there's some good, but there's also plenty of bad they're going to have to clean up.
No doubt about that. But, Mark, I think that this was a game that there were some question marks wondering who were these big-time offensive weapons going to be, especially for Alabama in the passing game. Now, with that said, Bryce Young, obviously, we only got a little bit of a sample size of what he was able to do today due to the injury. But it seemed like guys, Kobe Prentice, JoJo Earl back from injury in the game. Isaiah Bond did some good things as well. Maybe we are seeing these guys emerge, or maybe it's really just wide receiver by committee a little bit. I mean, and that's not necessarily all a bad thing. For so many weeks, Mark, we've been talking about, okay, who is going to be that standout guy? Well, maybe there isn't one standout guy. Maybe there's just a handful of guys, and it can be anyone's night in that moment.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, and I do think you saw a little bit of a wide receiver by committee there. What'll be interesting to see, especially depending on what Bryce Young's immediate future is, how much more they go back to being more of a run oriented first type of team until Milroe can get that timing down. He
Yeah,
had, I think, Burton real deep. He was open. He kind of underthrew it. Burton had to wait on it. The cornerback was there. So those are the type of things that they're going to have to work on with Milroe moving forward, because
yeah,
you saw them go back to a little bit of an RPO there in the second half.
yeah,
But to their credit, they certainly got with the program, and they were able to overcome not repping that a whole lot, and really
yeah,
played well offensively in that fourth quarter. But yeah, I think those wide receivers are going to have to step up. And how different will that passing game look if
yeah.
Bryce Young isn't there is going to be huge.
We will see. And you start to wonder, okay, how quickly are they going to push him to be back? And honestly, they're not. They're not going to push him because they understand. Nick Saban understands. The medical team understands that this guy has a very long life of football ahead of him. And Texas A&M, who is not the Texas A&M that we
Yeah,
saw a
they're a
year
hot
ago.
mess.
I
Yeah.
mean, listen. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's not going to be competitive if Jalen Milroe is the quarterback, but I feel like Bama can get it done, especially with the game being at home. If you're just tuning in, it's the Bama Postgame Show brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. We appreciate all of your comments. Sharon Lee, hats off to Milroe and Gibbs, the rest of the team for getting it done. Everyone is standing out. Kimberly Bowles says here, and guys, we appreciate your comments. Mark, Bama gets it done, 49-26, the final. You talked a minute ago about Jahmyr Gibbs, what he was able to provide this offense. 317 rushing yards total, 206 were him alone. I mean, this
Yeah.
guy is elite.
Yeah. So, it had me thinking, for all those that are closer to my age than you are Simone's age, go back way back when. I think it was late 90s. I think Simone was like 3 or 4,
Oh my
but
God.
there's some guy named Sean Alexander, was in
Yeah.
Baton Rouge and had 270+ yard runs in the second half alone, and wound up with like 291 yards rushing. And so when I saw Gibbs kind of do this thing, kind of brought me back to that time. And
Yeah.
we all know what an unbelievable career Sean had, not only in college, but in the pros. But they were talking about getting that running game down and finding some stuff to kind of build on. And boy, they came out. It was a huge second half running the ball for Alabama, old school running the ball.
No question. Let's switch gears a little bit, talk about this Bama defense. KJ Jefferson was a guy that killed Bama last year. I mean, this is a one-score game a year ago in Tuscaloosa. KJ Jefferson put up 300 plus, 3 touchdowns. And today, it just really seemed like the emphasis was on containing Jefferson in the run and shutting him down in the pass game. And for the most part, seemed like Alabama was successful in that regard.
Yeah, they really were, and I thought they third quarter things went very awry. Right, they were up 28-0, some crazy stuff on special teams. But I thought what Jefferson does, what KJ does really well, is he hides the ball so well in that RPO. If you saw a couple of the times he had some real success, guys just didn't know who had the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, and he's such a load to bring down. But at the end of the day, I thought Pete Golding and that defense did a nice job of bringing extra guys, forcing him to throw the ball. And I thought overall, they dictated more to Arkansas's offense more than Arkansas's offense dictated to Alabama's defense.
Yeah, you see the shot of there of Sam Pittman. He's really doing some impressive things with Arkansas. This is a team where, if you remember, not very long ago, Mark, this was not even a game. This was certainly not a game that would be on the 2:30 CBS game of the week. I'll tell you that. This is a game that was like, okay, this is not going to be competitive. This is not going to be something that's really worth watching. It's kind of like a bye week. But Nick Saban has never lost to Arkansas. But the Razorbacks are on the rise. And I want to just bring up really briefly that the incredible execution of that onside kick, man.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I know that this is an Alabama postgame show right now and it's Bama fans, but kudos to Sam Pittman to have the strength, I guess is the right word that I can say.
The words you're looking for are testicular fortitude.
That's what I wanted to say,
There
but
you
I wanted to be appropriate here on the show. But I was literally sitting there watching. I said, he just said, y'all are going to have to beat me in my place. So, I mean, that was an impressive call, and the execution was unbelievable.
Well, it felt, Alabama fans, help me, correct me if I'm wrong. Most of you normally do, but that third quarter kind of felt a little Johnny Manziel, Texas A&M-ish, where I felt like Alabama was in all the right spots, forcing them into third and longs and still being in the right spots, but just crazy stuff happening, right? There was a third and 14 where I think Alabama was there to make the play, but Sanders shook one of the defensive backs, and he gets the first. They get down and they go and score, and then they get the onside kick, and then they convert another 3rd and 7 when KJ steps up. He hit Jackson. They were both unscripted kind of random plays, and it just kind of had that feel to it before Alabama started the fourth quarter and kind of retook that momentum.
Yeah, they definitely had the momentum coming out of halftime. And I think that when you go into the locker room and you know that QB1 is not going to play at that point, I mean, you probably know what the injury is if you're the team. So you're hopeful about that. But you know this is a different guy that's going to lead the team. But Saban's obviously in that locker room saying, hey, guys, regardless of who's under center, like we have to rally and we have to make this happen. On the other locker room, I mean, you know, Sam Pittman's in there saying, guys, this is our opportunity. If we're going to beat Bama, we're going to do it with Bryce Young off the field. This is an opportunity to do that. I think Bama had to bounce back a little bit there in the third quarter, and obviously the fourth was owned by the Tide. Mark, I think that this is a huge statement situation for Alabama going on the road on the SEC in a somewhat hostile environment in Fayetteville. I mean, they've got some incredibly loyal fans. They were rocking there in the third quarter. For Alabama to weather that storm, to win by 20 plus, I think is very telling of what this team is capable of from a mental standpoint, now returning home to play Texas A&M.
Well, you and I clearly got the message about the red out, so kudos to us.
Clearly.
But to your point, it's been proven over not only this season with Texas, but even in the last season that Alabama has not gone on the road and had true road games where they have really kind of put it to opponents.
Yes.
This was kind of the first time in the last year or so with even Bryce Young at quarterback where they've been able to go out there and definitively make a statement. So to your point, yeah, and I think what makes it even more impressive is the fact that Bryce wasn't out there. Milroe certainly sparked him in a way that maybe Arkansas is probably used to practicing against, but wasn't really ready to rep in game time, where he is a legit running threat, where he'll just get out in open space and outrun opponents. And Bryce Young is still a maestro of point guard, and what he does and the patience is unparalleled right now in college football. But it's a little bit of a different style of play when Milroe's in there, and it proved to be just as successful.
Yeah, if you're just tuning into the BAM Postgame Show brought to you by Medical Properties Trust, Nick Saban will join the postgame press conference here shortly. We'll carry that here on Facebook, YouTube, and all of the social medias for AL.com. Quickly, Mark, if you look ahead at what things look like for the Tide at home against Texas A&M, and then it's a third Saturday in October at Tennessee, and that game is kind of one of those where you just wonder, what is this going to look like? And then obviously not knowing what the status of Bryce Young at that point will be is also going to make this kind of an interesting situation.
Yeah, so you kind of pointed to the fact that Texas A&M is not nearly what everybody thought they were going into the year. So regardless of who's at quarterback, you got to feel pretty good about Alabama's chances hosting the Aggies based on everything that happened with Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher. This one's been circled a long time. But you're right, things get really interesting in that Tennessee game because Volunteer fans, whether you want to agree or disagree, they're starting to believe right now. They're starting to believe that this is a team that can really do what hasn't been done in Tennessee in years, and that's beat Alabama. They're talking about Hendon Hooker being a Heisman finalist, the whole deal. Like they're Rocky Top is back, according to Josh Heupel. So we'll see.
Find out.
And then you get Mississippi State back at your place. So yeah, this is going to be a tough 3-week stretch or 2.5-week stretch with A&M in there until you get to the bye week.
Yeah, it will be interesting for sure. Quickly looking around the SEC before we head on out. Auburn just kicked off against LSU at home. Right now, leading LSU 7-0. Ole Miss beat Kentucky in a wild ending at home. That was a crazy game, Mark. Mississippi State beats Texas A&M. And again, like you said, this Aggie team is not the Aggie team that we thought this game was going to be going into next week.
Well, I guess we'll have to wait another year before they stencil Jimbo Fisher's name in that plaque they received for national. Was that a roll? Can you roll your eyes on a national broadcast?
I don't know if I can, but this is the Alabama Postgame Show. And by the way, he bought that entire class. Okay, all right, guys, we're gonna don't say that. I don't say that. I'm not trying.
AJ McCarron, now the second most controversial figure in the state of Alabama this week.
And I'll take that top spot, no problem. Guys, thank you so much for tuning to the Alabama Postgame Show brought to you by Medical Properties Trust. For Mark Heim, I'm Simone Eli. We will see y'all next week.
Medical Properties Trust, at the very heart of healthcare.